jinxed webinar I've ever done. So hello to everyone that's coming into the room. Welcome back. Yesterday, the servers collapsed. So that's why you got cut out. A lot of people thought it was your own connection. It wasn't. It was Adobe's fault. Adobe collapsed yesterday. And that's why we all suddenly disappeared. I wanted to finish it off. So I said, let's come back today and do it. But of course, we were halfway through. Well, we were about a quarter of the way through. And so I wanted to go back to the beginning so we can make a clean recording so people can go back to the recording. Okay. So you will know the answers to the first few questions. So what I did yesterday was I started with this. And as people know, these were my pictures from my lockdown. So these are 3 pictures of things I've been doing down the lockdown. And those of you who are just coming into the room now would have come into the room at the point that that I had put these on the board. Okay, so hopefully you can see 6 pictures on the board, and we were just discussing those. Okay, so I went for a walk this morning with my son. We're allowed to do 1 walk a day. Okay, we're allowed to do 1 walk a day to keep fit, and we took my phone with me, and we took 6 pictures. So these are my 6 pictures, and we're just trying to guess what were in the pictures. Okay. So in the chat box, some people were trying to guess Angry Birds. It's not Angry Birds. No dogs. I am a cinephobe. So it's not dogs. Horse, dog's legs, no dogs. Playground, window reflection, empty roads. I tell you what, let's because I don't like single words. Your language teachers. Let's play with modal verbs. Give me a modal verb. So it could be. So Velmira, good one. Children playground. So what would it be? Melinda, what could it be? Could you tell me what could it be? It could be a knee. Thank you, Renata. It could be an empty playground. It could be a road. It could be a church. Okay, let's change. Let's not get stuck in one modal verb, please. It might be the shin of a horse. Martina, that's beautiful. You go to the top of the class. It might be a car. Thank you, Cantero. It might be a very old car. It might be a volleyball net. Yes, Paula, it was very difficult to join. We're just doing the warmer. Don't worry. It might be rides. It might be a road. Ha. Okay, so again, you should take clearer pictures. Oh, thanks, Chris. You know how long it takes me to blur these pictures, but I like your use of the modal verb. I do that. It might be an Angry Birds poster. No, not at all. It might be a view from a car. Okay, one of those London iPods. It might be, but I live in Oxford. Shall I show you the pictures? So this is the first picture. This is about 300 meters from my house. No, about 400 meters from my house. And you can see it is a very deserted road. So picture 1 was a road you were going. It is absolutely, although you can't tell that now, it's absolutely cloudy, but it was very beautiful this morning. Okay, number 2. Okay, it should be busy. I love the use of the modal there. So number 2 was a horse. I think people were guessing the horse. So actually, if I just go back a picture, on this side on the left, there is a field of horses. So that's a picture in there. Hi, for those of you coming in. Yes, the internet has been a real pain today. Then the other top picture was an empty playground. This is right round the corner from my house. And while we can go for a walk, we are forbidden from playing in playgrounds. So my poor little son has to walk past looking at the swings, and he's not allowed to go on the playground. So the playground is deserted. Okay, some people thought this was Angry Birds. It's not. Anybody know what it is? This is Pokemon Go. Yes, it is. It should be a game. Thank you. This is Pokemon Go. Yes, Christina. My son and I go Pokemon hunting. That's what we do every day when we're allowed out the house. So we go around. But I switched the augmented reality off. So we go around and do some Pokemon hunting, and this was the one today. You can see we were hunting that at 10:04 this morning on it. All right. The next one then was a really obscure picture. This was a window I passed on the walk today. And you can see here, the rainbow. We're encouraged to put rainbows into the windows to cheer people up. It's just a really, I just thought it was a really nice window. And you can see here the little message that says that even in social distancing, we're all in it. Hi, Sheila. Oh, I feel better now Sheila's here. All right. So this was a window I passed on the way, and the kids had taken that. The reflection is actually me and my son that you can see taking the photo. And then finally, the last picture was of a lamppost. This is part of Oxford, which has lampposts. So this last picture in the bottom corner was a lamppost. So that was my warmer, and so we did it. Of course, we did this synchronously. We didn't do it asynchronous. We did it synchronously. What was the language point that we were practicing? So what was the language point that was being practiced here? Modals. Okay, so we're using modal verbs. Yeah, so basically all I did was take a few pictures on my phone and then use the edit mode. Even though Chris insulted my photo taking, I used the edit mode to make them more difficult for you to guess. Now, a typical using my mobile phone, using some pictures, and turning it into a language activity. So there you go. Chris, I think now just for practice, you should every sentence you write has to have should in it. Okay. So you see, so as my synchronous activity. So I've given you a language practice activity, and one which very funny, and one which the students could do as well. You know, it doesn't have to be me sharing my photos. It could be the students, their homework, if I've just taught modals, could be finding a photo on their mobile phone and taking it. And if they can share the screen with you in a synchronous room, then they can show you the photo. If you don't have that synchronous ability that you can share, then they could send you the photos and you could put them up on the screen. Okay. Hello, everybody that's coming in. We're just done our synchronous warmer. So going back to what we did yesterday, I'm not going to answer the questions again because I answered them yesterday. So let's have a look at the warmer. Can you remember what type of interaction that kind of warmer would be? Would it be personal, factual, creative, fanciful, or critical? So definitely personal. Yeah, personal. There are some facts involved as well. But if I ask my students to do that task, don't worry about being late, Bella. It's the websites have all been down. The internet is basically buggered. So well done for getting in. All right. So yeah, we call it. I would say this was a personal task because I'm bringing you my photos. It was my journey. I could see why some people might argue for the factual because they were real things. But it would be a personal task where my students would, where I provide the model with the photos, and then my students would supply it with their photos. I don't think it's fanciful because fanciful is kind of imaginative. So if I said, here are 6 stories, can you make them in? Here are 6 pictures, can you make them into a story? That might be more fanciful, Dana. Okay, so yeah, as Sveta said, it would be more the role plays, more the creativity of it, more drawing on the imagination, which these are more factual or personal. So these are the categories that I talked about in the first session as a way of interaction. So I began synchronously, but of course I could do both of this task, either the tasks here or my other photo warmer, asynchronously. And that's when we kind of have to consider how it would be different. So in a synchronous classroom, I would have taken the photos beforehand. So the preparation would be the same. I would have made taken the photos and made the collage or made the PowerPoint. And then in the synchronous classroom, I would have shared my screen and got the students to do what you did in the chat box, or I would have used the microphones if I had a small class. But in an asynchronous classroom, I would have put them maybe into a discussion board or as a blog. Eduardo, it's very well timed. So as a place where they could sit, and then the students can comment and discuss them asynchronously. So the beginning of the task would be made in the same way, but the execution would be really really different. So as I was saying in the first session, what we need to think about when we're setting up asynchronous tasks is how we think about that classroom management. So just to repeat how I would set this task up asynchronously, I would put it into a discussion forum. It would be a whole class task. I would pace it over a few days, because obviously asynchronous allows people to come in at their own time. And I would monitor by checking that people were answering. And then feedback is something that I would do, but not till later. Jane, it will go on YouTube at some point, the first recording. Okay. Those of you who are coming in now, well done. The connection is horrible. Well done for your perseverance. And then I think I'm getting to about the point where we collapsed yesterday. So what I was suggesting yesterday was as a good framework for lesson planning for an asynchronous task is this framework put forward by Jilly Salmon, and the link at the bottom of the screen will take you there. And Jilly Salmon, when she wrote her book on e-activities, a number of years ago now, suggested this framework for how we think about how a task will work asynchronously. So this is kind of like the as I said, the lesson plan as such, the activity plan. And certainly, as I said yesterday, when I started online asynchronous as a teacher, which is over a decade ago now, this really helped me go through and think about what's going to happen in my activity and how it's going to be executed. So so the title of the activity would be Modal Warmer. The purpose of the activity to practice modal verbs. No, the slides are still there. The spark was one of the words that people had trouble with yet. Is what's the spark that's going to be the imagination for the topic. So in this case, it would have either been the personal pictures or the fact that pictures were taken at strange angles, and so on. So we go through all these and fill that in, and it really helps us think about how we're going to stage the activity online. Would it be, as I can't remember the guy's name, would it be on a blog? Would it be in our Google Classroom? Are we going to use it like on a Padlet? Which of the asynchronous tools are we going to use, and how are we going to put it forward? Okay. So if you go to the e-activities page that she is current, oh, that's a shame, Lawrence. So that page, it won't work. Oh, I'll try and make sure that I'll find the model and try and send it out later on. She has a full model of it. Yes, Martin, thank you. You're there. Martin there's a lot of stuff. Welcome, Martin. Hi. There's a lot of stuff on Jilly's page that will be there that can help you with the activities. So as Martin has just put in, there's also this link on YouTube, which is to her 5-stage model. Yeah, thank you, Martin, for putting the book in. You see, these books were written about a decade ago. I think I said yesterday, they're so really relevant now, and not a lot has changed in terms of asynchronous teaching. What has changed is how well we can do it. So if you can get a hold of the book, it's well worth a read. I know some people often get put off by older dates, but it's really, really worth it. So in session 1, I was talking about different models that we might use about asynchronous teaching. And I think this is the moment we got cut off yesterday. So I was talking that 2 of the models. One is Salmon's 5-stage model, which I think helps us as tutors and online teachers understand how people develop online. And one of the things that I was referring to in session 1 is that a lot of asynchronous teaching is often somebody just putting out a document and then you picking it up. So the way my school's working at the moment, in fact my son's school's working at the moment, is they put out the material and you download it. That's it. So the asynchronous part of it is the material is there for you to download, but there's no interaction. There's not a class. There's not, there's no proof of learning. It's still asynchronous, but it's not perhaps a good model. It's not what we would do as teachers, as online practitioners. So if we look at Salmon's 5-stage model, what I was suggesting in session 1 is this moving through the stages. It's a great way of thinking about how your class will evolve online. And I also, though I don't often actually work in community of inquiries, I do think the Garrison Anson Archer model of community of inquiry is really interesting as to remind me of the things that need to be there in an asynchronous course. And those things being the social presence, that the students know that they're in a class, for example. They know that people are there. In a physical classroom, or even now, you can see the teacher or you can see the students. But asynchronously in your Google Classroom or in your blog or in your Moodle or Seesaw, whatever you're using, you can't see the students and they can't see each other. So they need to feel that they're there. And then there's the cognitive presence of having a good challenge, and of course the teacher presence. And it's the teacher presence I really want to focus on for the next part of this webinar. So you should know the answers to this because I asked you this yesterday. What makes a good teacher? Into the chat box. One word, please. So presenting, patient, communicative, perfect. Encouraging and supporting learning, flexible, fab. Great, Sinead, I just saw your message. I'm not lagging in any way, I don't think. I think I'm good. If it's people lagging, they should pause me themselves so they can go over my picture and lag. Okay, thanks. Great. So challenge, passion, patience. Let me know though, Sinead, and if it is a problem, I will switch off. Wisdom, empathy, enthusiasm, knowledgeable, flexible, friendly. Brilliant. Okay, so look at all those words that have gone into the chat box. Okay, if you could only pick 3, what would be the 3 words? So if you could only pick, well, if you've got collaborative, whatever, positivity, what, all of the above. Jacqueline, that's the real sit on the fence answer. Thank you, Sophia. Patience, listening, humor. Thank you, Jacqueline, for saying all of above. So there we go. So again, this was the activity that we were talking about yesterday. And the question I also asked, I think yesterday, and now I know where we definitely cut off yesterday, is which kind of task is this? Is it personal, factual, creative, fanciful, or critical? Okay, which one is it? So critical, yep, because you're getting the students to critically think about it. And again, remember we're doing, we're doing this synchronously, but this would work very well asynchronously. And asynchronously, I would start the discussion, let the discussion run. So we got a list of those adjectives that were coming into the board. Okay. And then I, as a teacher, would so if let's say I let it run for a couple of days with people writing adjectives. Then as a teacher, I monitor that. Then I collect those adjectives together, maybe create the list, put the list either in a poll or back into a discussion board, and then ask the students to do part 2 of the task. So we get to the top 3 activities. So it's kind of like, it's almost like what do we call them in class, a pyramid discussion, but we're doing it asynchronously through text chat rather than through talking as we would in a synchronous classroom. And then just to give you some yes, exactly, Uma, they could be extended into a writing activity. Just to give you some contrast, these were 2 memes that I found online that made a good teacher. So we could just have a contrast of feedback against something else. And of course, we could then extend the task even further and discuss these 2 things. Okay, and it is this point, wasn't it, that I got cut off? Because I was about to say yesterday, what makes a good teacher online? So if I think about all those things that you've just put into the chat box, let me go back up the chat box a bit. So friendly, patient, wise, passionate, flexible, knowledgeable, enthusiastic, all those things. What makes a good teacher? Kim, how fortuitous that this is the point you rejoin us. So Answering emails of days. Answer Jacqueline. Why on earth are you answering emails all day? Get office hours put in place. Um, so, do these things change? And as most of you are kind of saying, no, they don't. You know, the teacher is still the teacher, but there are some things that might change. That's a really good answer, Noddy, the confidence in knowing what you're doing. Technologically literate, to an extent, yes, Sheila. But I think it also depends on how things, on how a site works. I think you need to know how a site works to operate it. But you might be lucky and have other people that would know a lot of the technology. I'm going to look at what might change then. Okay, so obviously, I think the first thing that might change, obviously asynchronously, is there are no visual clues. Yeah. So in the classroom, we spend a lot of time looking at our students. We monitor, kind of looking at body language and picking up what's going on, and we adjust our teaching. You know, if somebody has, if you think somebody's got a quizzical look, we will change the way we present something. But we lack the visual clues asynchronously. Our students are logging on at different times, so we can't see how well they're doing. We can't see if they're struggling particularly. We can't see if we need to re-explain something. We can't see that the task is set up right. So also feeding into that, there is, from a student point of view, there's a lack of immediate feedback. You know, the students could post something, and they could post it in the morning, and the teacher might not be online until later on in the day, or the teacher might not want to give some feedback immediately, which I'll discuss later on. Okay, and this would feed into clarification. If a student in a class doesn't understand, then you will as a teacher show empathy and get in there and help out. But asynchronously, that might not happen. It might be a long time before there's any clarification. Just feeding into what I think Jacqueline was it that said answering emails all the time. I think teachers often think there's a lack of defined hours, in the sense that the students are bugging you all the time. And I think people that are definitely new to online asynchronous teaching are struggling because they're working all the time, and they need to define when, or need to show people when people are online and define when they will be online. So a good online teacher takes the skills that they have, and probably to a certain extent accentuates them. We have to be very, very clear in the instructions that we give. Okay, we have to make sure that they are, as Eduardo is saying, is written with great clarification. This might also mean that we need to record ourselves giving the instructions so the students feel that they see us. It might mean that we need to make sure that we go, that we shouldn't be worried, or we should look and see if people have posted or said something, and then consider what we might have done wrong, perhaps in the setup, if things aren't going as they would, because everything is slowed down and accentuated with it. Lydia, what I'm suggesting is that the connection is that these lack of things accentuate what we've got to do online. That the skills of a teacher are the same, but the things that kind of are missing from what we do synchronously mean we have to extend some of those skills. So lack of defined hours. I know I'm not trying to say that you should go against your school bodies or school authorities, but really the only way that a teacher can work properly online is to define the amount of hours they're going to work on a particular course. So when I work online, my students know my office hours, so they know that they would expect me to have answered at this point or this point or this point with it. And if parents have lots of questions and answers, then what I would do is I would try and group them all together and send it out as one update rather than deal with each one individually. Okay, so and actually we just received it from our school this morning. So my my son's headmistress sent out her morning email, which was a video with her giving some clarifications with it. So, trying to answer everyone individually doesn't necessarily work. And having some form of office hours and saying, okay, at this time I'll be on this class, on this time I'll be on this class, I think gives you some sensibility. If you try and work 24/7, you too will become demotivated with it. You cannot answer everyone. If you think about it from a physical classroom point of view, you wouldn't necessarily have the parents in the class. So the teaching and the parents need to be separated, although I fully understand that the two things might go together with young kids asynchronously. Yeah? Well, not everybody respects. I think that's partly up to you, Zorana. I would say that I'm quite a stubborn person, and I would respect that completely. Thank you. That's great positivity, Joe. Jane, sorry, Zorana. I would say, kind of enforce it and say this is when it's going to happen. That to a certain extent, and if you continually answer them that other time, then they will continue to expect that. Yeah. So it's not for me to tell you how to work. I'm just saying that's how I would. That's how I would do it. And you have to kind of set the ground rules and set the what we would call the company culture. This is the way that we work. Yeah. So that's how I would do it. But as I say, I'm not trying to rock the boat and get you into all sorts of trouble. But this is a very, you see a lot of memes of things going online at the moment. How amazing it is that how amazing it is that educators around the world have switched from teaching in a classroom to teaching in some form of online in a week without really complaining or whatever. But that people are forgetting how much pressure that's taken us and put it onto us as teachers, and it's very important that we stay sane. As you say, there's isolation, there's demand. It's a new world for everyone, but we're not there to solve everybody's problems. We try and help because that's what we do as teachers. But we need to do this. We need to teach these new people how this new world is working. Yeah. So anyway, let me get off my soapbox and move on a little bit. And the other thing I would say before for being a good teacher is that you should show an appreciation for working online. And what I mean by that is that while you might not fully understand it, and while you might find it stressful, and while you're getting used to it, the more that you sell it and the more that you have this positivity about it, the more you will be able to sell it to your students and your parents and your colleagues. Yeah. If you're coming into it with a negativity or whatever, then you've got to put that almost little face on and it's great. We can all reflect. We can all take a bit longer. We can do a little bit of personal. We can do some individual. You see what I mean? If we have an appreciation and show that we're enjoying this new environment, even if we're not, it will rub off. And again, if I talk about company culture, this building this understanding of this is our norm. This is how it is. So, as I say, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but people do look to the educators to maintain that positivity. All right, so I've looked at the teacher. Let's look at the students. Are you ready? Here, I'm not going to look at learning styles because they're too controversial. But what I am going to do is I'm going to default to three sources for describing students. There was a question and it sticks in my mind, that Graziella asked a couple of days ago about the lazy students. And if you were here, then I said, to me, the problem is actually the better students. So I'm going to give you three types of students. Okay, these are three labels for online students. Can you work out what they are? All right, three labels for online students. Can you work out what they are? So swimmer, waver, and drowner are my three examples. Yeah, no, The one who knows how to swim is a swimmer. That's a wonderful one. Yeah. Good, excellent, poor. Okay. Yeah, I really like the terms because I think they work, and I think it's much clearer to describe students like this rather than in perhaps that model. So there are three terms that Gilly Salmon uses to describe the different type of learner online. Waves hello goodbye. So this I want to play that song now. A swimmer obviously jumps in, confident, quite happy. Off they go. This is your strong student. They're the first to post every task that comes on. They're the first to post. So they posted and they sit there and they're waiting for everybody else to do it. The waiver is a bit in between. Okay, the waiver is the person. If you think of the analogy of going into the sea, the waiver is the one that kind of goes to the edge and puts their foot on it, put their tiptoes in, and he's okay with it, but not so sure with it. So they probably just need a little bit of encouragement. Go on, you can do it. So the swimmer jumps straight in, no problem. The waiver will jump in if you push them. If you pushing somebody into water, I did not recommend that. Pushing somebody in the right way they'll get going. They might just need a little bit more help. And our drowner is the person that's like, oh, what is this new world? I have no idea. That's a great one there, Sarin. The drowner are the ones who have no idea about how to manage it. So they can't do it. They probably won't post. The whole concept of being in an asynchronous room just frightens them. Okay, so in a sense, swimmers don't need much support. They'll get on with it. Waivers, you need to be there to motivate with them. And a drowner, they're the student that needs lots of support, the ones that really get going. Absolutely, you could apply it to parents online with it. Yeah, exactly, Hebo. A waiver needs help but wants to learn. So these absolutely, Gloria. I've just put them into a student comparison for a moment. Okay, so our swimmers will get on with it. Our waivers we need to support, and our drowners we really need to support. The problem there, of course, is our swimmers going off down there. Bye-bye, off they swim, but we're still back here. So when I said said that to me, the stronger students are the issues. I think they can be asynchronously because they post and because they do everything so quickly. They get bored and they get frustrated because they finished. Okay, the same way fast finishers in the classroom get bored. So it's those that we've got to be wary of, I think. There is a fourth type that's from a different one, and this is the lurker. Asking the swimmers, yep, Magrina, the differentiation would be a great idea. So provide extra activities, swimmer, absolutely. Okay, so our fourth category then is the lurker. So who is the lurker? And this term has come about because you see them, the person who's on Twitter, but never, yeah, exactly, Mazia. The person that never, that's there, you kind of know that they've logged on, but they don't really take part with it. Okay, shy, hanging around, not participating. Shy is a really good analogy for it. I think shy works because they're probably just too scared to go in. And we've got to remember, as I said in the first session, there is a whole psychological issue for asynchronous work because it becomes more written down, it becomes more permanent, and that gives when people are in their second or third language, this can add a lot of pressure. Oh, I want to speak, but I'm not quite sure how, so I'll just sit and watch for a little bit. Yeah. So they're the lurkers. I think this is really interesting. I found, and I can't really source it, but I found this as well. And this because obviously I've worked asynchronously for over a decade. I think this is these are really good analogies. So I found this presentation that used animals to describe students online. So one of the students is what is this kind of student? What animal is this? It's a wolf. Okay, so this person described the student as a wolf is they do it once a week. They come in, they kind of eat, do their once a week, then they disappear, which I find is really funny. Hanan, I will go back to your question. The difference between a drowner and a lurker. A lurker perhaps wants to post, but is too shy, so they needs that help there. So you know they're there, but they're just not. Whereas a drowner is like the technology is too much and they'd be demotivated. So our wolf does once a week, lots of activity, then disappears. Okay, here's another animal. Yes, exactly, Eduardo. So the elephant. So the elephant is a student who completes. Who comes on very it's clip art, you know, Sheila. Comes on, does a little bit here, a little bit there. There's a little bit slow and steady kind of thing. Okay. So the next one is a mouse. But he's happy. Yeah, I'm not. These are not negative analogies. I just think they're very good analogies of how students work. With cheese, shy, a little bit. Yeah. So the mouse probably comes on once a week, does a little bit of here, a little bit of there, then disappears again. Okay. The rabbit. And of course, if you think about this, rabbit in idiomatic actually means something. So if you rabbit, what do? You rabbit some of your rabbits on. They never stop talking. Yeah, so your rabbit is your prolific poster, the person that posts. That way. I think I've got two more. The stag. The stag does what? The big mighty stag. Yeah, they strut around. Yeah. So they're the dominant ones. Okay, they're the ones that want to dominate the discussions. Okay, so they're the ones that are confident. They want to come in. They're the opinion ones. They're the ones that want to take part. That want to be the dominant ones. And finally, you've got your magpie. And a magpie would do what? The student who wants to teach. That's a great one. All that glitters is gold. Exactly there. What does a magpie do? A magpie steals. And this is your student that is not digitally literate and doesn't understand. So borrows. I always avoid the word cheat, as you know, if you've listened to me over any of these webinars. So they borrow, plagiarize, repeat what other says. So we're dealing with all this mix, okay? So I mean, this is as the teacher, and we're used to dealing with these students in line. We know to keep that one quiet. We know to bring in that student. We know that one's going to do that. We know this. We know that. But of course, asynchronously, it's like a free for all, and these student types really affect how we use our time and what we do. Okay. So what I thought I would do, we've got about 10 minutes left. So what I want to do is I bring in some student types. Okay, these are all kinds of students that I've dealt with online. Okay, so here's a student. Okay, so here's a scenario. You've started a discussion task for a class on hobbies, and one student has posted and keeps posting about everything they do in their spare time. What kind of student would that be? So it's a rabbiter, yeah. It could be a stag, I think Sylvia says there. Definitely a swimmer, Hanan using that analogy, a stag. So as a teacher, how do we deal with that person? So if we're in the asynchronous environment, how do we deal with that person? What do we do? How do we help that or help the others maybe in this case? Stop them, which could be a bit rude, because so give them some attention, set some limits, compliment them. Yeah. So my reaction to this person might be to when we talk about monitoring, would be to reply and say thank you very much. Wow, you're a really busy student, aren't you? You do a lot in your spare time, and maybe ask them a follow-up question like, which do you like doing the most? Giving that person there. Susie, a private reply was there. Olga, while giving them a different task is quite good. Remember, asynchronously, the other students who might come on later might see the other task and feel left out. Yeah, I'm not saying no. Just remember asynchronously that people might see that and then feel, oh no, I've got another task. What do I do now? with it. So I definitely think that, but I would use my feedback to almost give the other task by saying, which do you like best? Tell me something about that. So it's very similar. Exactly, Martin. Exactly. Absolutely. With it. Let's choose another scenario then. So you started a discussion task with 24 hours still, no one has posted anything. So there are two reasons here. One could be, yes, you've got lots of lurkers. Everybody sat there going, oh, who's going to post first? Linda, you hit the cry. Linda, you hit the nail on the head, I think. So we could have to look at ourselves as a teacher and say, oh, Martin, thank you for paying attention. So you look online and look at the task. So are they all lurkers? Or is there something wrong with the task? Is there something wrong with everybody? Are the instructions clear? Okay, Michael or Mikhail, depending on which part of the world you live in, providing a model to get things rolling, great. And as Martin said, is it Wednesday? Because on Wednesday, nobody posts. Okay, one student keeps angrily emailing you because nothing on the course site works properly. Do a Sinead. What's a Sinead, Helen? Work overload. This happened to me. What kind of poor Sinead? So this is probably, yeah. I think we're naming this. This actually, Eduardo. This one is really true because on my course, I've been dealing with somebody that thinks everything is broken all the time. So yeah, so this is a drowner. This is probably a drowner. This is somebody who's not used to technology. They need help. And this is, so we talk about when to email people. This is probably somebody that needs an email from me. Yeah. I missed what Helen's definition was about Sinead. So D, most students have joined in the discussion, but one student seems to be very quiet. Polite but firm. That's very Sinead, yes. So most students have joined the discussion once through. So we've got a mouse, we've got a lurker. Kim, very good. Sorry, I think it was Kim. Apologies, not. Email them if they're okay. See if they're okay. Ask them personally, Svetlana. Yeah, great. So this is perhaps, so when we talk about monitoring, we monitor, we notice this has happened. So we've got 18 students working fine. And then we have to go and we'll probably talk to that one student and see if they're okay with it. Give them some one-to-one contact. And you see, and what I'm trying to get over the point here is if we start understanding the students, it helps us move our time. It helps me understand that, okay, 18 of those students are okay. That's the student I need to focus on. So when we've talked about spending 24/7 online trying to do stuff, this is how I manage my time. I look at how, when I'm monitoring, I'm looking at how the students are getting on initially and dealing with those, leaving those that are going okay, responding and pushing those that are doing fine, and dealing on a more one-to-one level with the students that are perhaps struggling. One student uses a voice that they suggest might have borrowed an answer. So Carolina, you're right on there. You've got the magpie. Paolo, that's a very good question. If you email the person and don't reply, I'd email once and I'd wait about 48 hours. Then I'd send another email saying it was urgent. And then if I had their contact details, I'd ring them or Skype them. Okay? Or arrange to Skype them or Zoom them or whatever. But it does depend. So this is a magpie. This is somebody who is committing plagiarism in that sense. And so we need to make that clear. And we'll come to one way to make that very clear in a moment. Yeah, exactly, Priyanka. So one student keeps emailing, you've posted and haven't replied, while another posts that the group mates are being too slow. Magdalena, yeah, pusher, that's a new term, but that's great. So our pusher would be probably our stag in the first one. Put the question into the board, and I'll answer it if I can. I've got a few minutes left, but since a lot of you came into the room slightly late, am I okay to go over a few minutes? Are you okay with that? Because I think so many people had trouble getting in the room. But of course, I am recording it, so if you do miss it, then you can come back to it. Okay, so the students that's emailing with it, yeah, that's okay, Sinead. That's fine. I've got two connections on, so it should be okay. So this student that is the stag. So this first student that posted, you haven't replied. I think they don't understand that this is a case going back to what people like Jacqueline and people said before of define, or what we talked about before, discussing our hours and discussing how a teacher works online and explaining that a little bit more. Okay. And the second part of that, the group mates have been slow. Well, it's an asynchronous course, so we have to define slow. Not everybody will post at the same time. So slow doesn't mean that slow. It means they're posting at a different time. So one way to solve all these things, of course, is Simona, it depends on how you're expected to work and how many classes you've got to do. Because of the nature of the courses that I run, mainly as a teacher developer these days, I tend to have my office hours in the morning and then again in the evening because I teach global classes. Yes, you do. So, Martin, teaching people how to learn online is very important, and I think this comes into what people call Netiquette. So, what you would call the classroom rules or the code of conduct. Yeah, I think Netiquette sets out the rules of how we are going to behave online, and it's very critical that students and parents receive this in the same way they would receive the class rules. Okay. Now, Netiquette rules change all the time. And if you want to see Netiquette rules, just Google online Netiquette. You will see so many different examples from them. But mine include things about what the rules are of the teacher, what you can expect from a teacher, about plagiarism, about those kind of things. Yeah? All right. So just for an example, here's one that I found under Creative Commons on the internet. So one way, with our asynchronous classes, we do need to establish the rules. Okay, so I've looked at the teachers, I've looked at the students, and I'm concluding that when you set up your asynchronous classes, that we need to have good netiquette. Okay, we need to make the rules explicit to the students and the parents about how this is going to work. Just because we're not in the same space doesn't mean to say you can't have rules and boundaries. Right. So let's go on to our let's take one of our tasks then. So here's we talked about monitoring. So here's a monitor session. So the swimmers have posted, one of the waivers has posted, the drowners are quiet, as are the lurkers. What do you do? Okay. The swimmers have posted, deadline reminder is a good one. That would include some people. Yeah, a polite reminder. Your swimmers are over here, though. Your drowners are over here. Your waivers are over here. Start grading the work. Has the task finished, Jacqueline? Does it need a grade? Give extra help? So somebody asked me how we monitor, how we deal with the monitoring. And again, I'm trying to illustrate what we're monitoring, not just for the quality of the work to grade or whatever, but where people are and how they're doing that work. That's what one of the purposes of monitoring should be. How am I going to react to this work? And also, when am I going to react to that work? Let's take this a little bit further. So here the swimmer has posted, yeah? The waivers and drowners are still waiting. But if so, now I'm in a dilemma. Do I give a feedback? Do I give feedback to the swimmers or not? Okay. What happens if I give feedback to the swimmers? It's quite difficult. This is tricky because if I give the swimmer some feedback, yes, it would give encouragement. But if I give the answer, am I not killing the task for everyone else? Well, if I want Ramina, I think if I give private feedback, then I have to give every student private feedback. So I'm making like 12, 14, 18, 20, 46 times the work. Linda, great answer. What about acknowledging it? Yeah, so when in the classroom, we could go up and give that private feedback. And I'm not saying we can't do it online, but you're just creating massive amounts of work if you do. So what we perhaps want to do is consider what type of feedback we're going to give. And I would go with Anna. I would perhaps say, well done for posting. That's a really interesting answer. I'm not going to say any more at this point, for example. Yeah. But as soon as the reminder, as soon as the deadline is gone, then I would give the feedback. Okay. Is this making sense? I'm trying to help you navigate what's going there. I've got no problem with personal feedback. My only problem with personal feedback, folks, is it will take you a lot of time to give personal feedback. Loads of time to give every person for personal feedback, and that's what we've got to be careful of. We do need to give it. So I think the way we give feedback, does change. Okay, so we perhaps changed our role. Okay, so rather than being the tutor and giving the answer, we would perhaps become an equal. Yeah, Maria, after the deadline, definitely. So we would perhaps become an equal and actually post like, that's a really interesting thing to say. Can you give me some more? Okay. Or as you said, we ask them to expand upon something, or ask people to encourage. Yeah. So when we're giving this feedback with the answers, I think we have to be careful asynchronously when we give it and what we give it. Yeah. So I'm almost coming to an end. You'll be pleased to hear. So wrapping it up. I think it was important because we've talked about copying and pasting and stuff. I think we have to be important that we need to be good models. If we've got magpie students, we have to avoid being magpies ourselves. And it's very tempting in an online class to actually get something off the internet and post it into our site. Images, for example. Okay, so I would strongly urge you to avoid plagiarizing people's images and use things that are, copyright free. The images that I have here are copyright. They're under the Creative Commons license, so they can be used freely in my site. Yeah, it's actually wrap it up, I hope, Christina. Think about using free images. Okay, if you want to use images that aren't your own, don't simply go to the website and take an image off a website. Okay, that's a poor model for a student. And if we want to avoid the students being magpies, we can't be a magpie ourselves. Yeah. So go to Pixabay. Use the Creative Commons search. There are many other sites. I didn't want to put them under. But Creative Commons licenses usually allow you to use things without too much issue. So our last little slide then. So I've looked at how we can frame activities. I've looked at how we can follow frameworks for asynchronous teaching. I've looked at what teacher skills are needed, and I've looked at the different types of students and how that affects how we behave as teachers. I think the final thing I need to remember is when we're setting out, when we're finishing, all tasks need a deadline. Yeah, because it's asynchronous and that can take time. We need to put a deadline in. We need to say this task will end at this time, and after that we will give the answers. A lot of you have talked about personal feedback and whatever. What I try to do at the end of a task, at the end of a discussion task, for example, is what online practitioners would call weaving, where you say, okay, so Martin said this and Oksana said this, and put it together that way. And then summarizing is just giving the end, summarizing and finishing off the discussion. So what I've tried to show you throughout the two webinars, it's just some tips and some ways that we can act asynchronously, and how and hopefully some other activities. I would always ask to my students I would always ask my students to reflect upon what they've done. So this would be the reflection task. And Barbara, the pizza's there deliberately since it's become a point. And this is some way that I might get them to reflect in audio rather than necessarily typing, just for a change of task. Okay. So, for example, I could get my students to record themselves on their phone and and send that recording to me. Or if you want a really simple site where the students can make a recording and post it asynchronously, then check out the site that I've just put in there now, which is an amazing site where you can just go and go record your voice and then post in the link. Anyway, to quote Barbara, I am always a bit talkative. I have tried to give you some tips. I hope you found it useful. This will be, of course, the recording will go online for it. Thank you for your patience. Thank you that we for coming. Apologies that Adobe gave up on us yesterday, and I'll see you again soon. Take care and look after yourselves. Stay safe.